Has this ever happened to you? You've been in PowerPoint for far too long and your presentation, it still ain't great. I hate to break it to you, it's not your slides, it's your story. Story format matters in your presentations. In this video, I'm going to take one of the most common presentation formats that you have been trying to actively ignore and show you how to apply it to any technical level presentation. It's known as the television infomercial. Bob, roll the tape.
Fits with slap chop.
If you want to stay warm and cuddly, then you need to put on a Snuggie. It's the blanket with sleeves.
One slap, salad.
That's a lot of damage. How about a little more?
Wait, that's terrible. I quit. Just a handful for the road.
Yeah, that nonsense. You can use it at work. You can use it in your research papers. You can use it in a white paper. It's one of the best formats for a story that requires the audience to finish the journey. Remember these 4 items: fail, fix, learn, and act. I have been parodying videos for over 20 years, and in that time also doing technical communications. And the intersecting point I found for that is the infomercial. I've done this job for major corporations, some of which are inside your computer right now. Some of you, though, you see my face somewhere else. You might have seen me on a stage at DragonCon interviewing guests for sci-fi and fantasy television. You might have seen the stupid things that I make in between those really cool panels at DragonCon, commonly known as DragonCon TV. Yeah, I made Stormtroopers Gone Wild. DragonCon TV has made a lot of fake product ads over the years. The infomercial is the easiest one to parody because we know the format so well and because it's just so over the top, it's so loud and intrusive. Because it has that volume and lowest common denominator communication style, you've been trying to tune it out. And yet, you own one of those products, don't you? You got a Snuggie at home? You got some Flex Seal? I own Flex Seal. Not proud of that one. I have a master's degree in EE. I should know better. Yet here we are.
Now that's a lot of damage.
If you want to do a full story, like you're an author and you're going to make the next great American novel, all right, fine. You're going to take the Campbellian hero's journey. If you're at work and you're writing a memo, you're going to take that 5-paragraph style they probably taught you in English or technical writing. That's not this video. What I'm talking about is the presentations you commonly give to customers or your colleagues. You want them to buy a product, change behavior, apply a security patch. Stop using C code for anything that has memory sensitivity because memory safety... Sorry, I wrote firmware for a while. I have opinions. Anyway, point being, you want someone to change their behavior. Now, that could be giving you money, that could be giving your boss money, or that could just be downloading some open source code and applying it to a faulty product. An infomercial works well when you want the audience to finish the journey. You want the audience to finish the story on your behalf. Don't think Luke Skywalker and the standard hero's journey in Star Wars. Think Obi-Wan Kenobi, trusted advisor, gives the hero a path, helps them along their way, explains the universe, and sets them on their way, just without the gruesome death to the guy in the machine with the red sword thing. Let's avoid that part, but just stick with me for the rest, okay? The infomercial works in a 4-story structure. Remember these 4 items: fail, fix, learn, and act. Fail is the black and white part, where absurd problem that no normal human would ever have in their normal lives on a normal Earth.
When it's time to strain, it can be a pain.
Okay, that's not actually what's happening here. Just hang on to that. I'll get to it in a minute. But let's assume that the problem is solid. This is the problem you want to present a solution for. You have a fail. Now you need the fix. The fix is what solves the fail. So fix is the introduction of the product, introduction of the solution, the code patch, the download, the use of Rust in your opening of programs because, dear Lord, the things that people do in C at the machine level... It's good. I'm on a healing journey away from assembly code. Everything's fine. Anyway, now, you've just introduced the idea of the fix. Now you get to learn. This is the longest part of the infomercial and should be, correspondingly, the longest part of your technical presentation. Learn is how you use the fix to stop the fail. Let's take a security presentation. Your normal black hat, DEF CON B-sides kind of situation. Some vendor has a remote camera that's exploitable. So you've gone through and found out, applied your expertise to the problem and found out the fix is to close a port, change a thing in the firmware, do some kind of bug fixing. Now, learn is the part where you would talk about the research you did, the code that you developed that will patch this problem, and how you worked with the manufacturer to do coordinated disclosure, put a patch up in GitHub, or get them to fix the firmware. So learn is where you express your expertise to the audience, and they learn why the fix is something that will stop their fail. Now you get to the most critical part, and the part that most people forget, which is act. You want the audience to finish the journey for you. You don't just want to be up there and look smart. You want them to take something useful and apply it. If there's a problem in the world, buying your product might solve it. Applying your code patch might solve it. The new cool research you and your PhDs did. Yeah, whatever it is that you have transmitted to them, they now need to take another step. In a sales presentation, it's called a call to action. You want the audience to do a specific thing. And nothing says call to action better than an ad format that is famous for saying the phrase, call now to order. The call to action in an infomercial is absurdly clear. Phone number, website, discount code, but wait, there's more. We know this format so well, let's just use it to our advantage. So again, fail, fix, learn, and act. I'm not asking you to take the absurdity of the infomercial. I don't want you to go out there and make like one of those weird mail order razor commercials that are way up in my Instagram feeds. I want you to be able to take the format, understand why it works well, and apply that to a calm, sane, and rationally researched presentation about something like why you should stop using PXE-boot. Because PXE-boot is just UDP and TFTP over a network, and it's only local, and it's only broadcast. And broadcast networking is so stupid because now we're all at home. Sorry. We wrote a standard. It's fine. Not my problem anymore. We fixed this problem. Let's talk about your problem, getting this presentation to stick. So again, back to an example I've used before. I've given a lot of presentations on security and firmware. They usually start on the failure point of firmware is complicated, and it's the attack target that a lot of people want to get into now because it has system persistence. It stays on the motherboard, it stays in the camera. Even if you do a hard reset, it's there. It has low-level machine access. I give them a fail point. Then fix is usually, here are some methods you can use to detect problems in your fleet management, or a piece of open source code you can run on a thing. Learn is going to be where I go through some common examples. I'm not going to dictate the entire readme.md to my audience, because once we get to act, and they've learned why it's important, and this is the thing that happens a lot in technical presentations, you've got two audiences. You have an audience that is in the room with you, or on the Zoom or Teams call with you. They're the ones who are absorbing the information. And they're learning why this approach, product, method, patch, whatever, is what they want to use, why they want to take it. Now that person might be the CEO, might be the CTO, head of IT. They might be a systems architect. They might not be the actual person who implements the problem. People work for these people. They've got some brilliant hacker back in the lab, and she's going to be the one who's going to put the patch down on all the systems. They've got a team in another country, and they need to send the white paper, the link to your website. And at that point, the call to action needs to be very clear, because that material may get passed on to someone else. They're going to be able to clearly get your call to action and absorb that entire story flow. They understand the failure point, how to fix it, they learn how to use it in the aggregate, and then they get more details through your call to action. Now let me go back to an earlier point that I made. The black and white part of the infomercial, fail. Fail is the part of the story where most people check out mentally on a standard infomercial. It's because the problem seems so absurd because they're consumer products, right? You're selling it to an average human, usually an average American, who's, let's face it, not an average human. Anyway, a lot of times, let's go back to the OG, the Snuggie. The thing that people point to is the bane of their infomercial existence. It's a blanket with sleeves. How hard could this problem be? If I just wanted to put a blanket over me, I got 2 good arms, I can hold a blanket down. You know who doesn't have 2 good arms? You know who can't stand up to put on a robe? People with physical disabilities and handicaps. Turns out the Snuggie and all of its knockoffs, they're all knockoffs of a handicap accessibility product. If Wikipedia is to be believed, that's called a slanket. But it turns out the handicap accessibility products like the slanket or the slap chop, you know, the weird bendy knives that you have to slap the top on like a whack-a-mole machine. Why would you use a slap chop if you've got a perfectly good hand to cut the thing and a perfectly good hand for the knife? Oh right, that requires 2 working hands. Not everybody has those. But those are niche products. If I just make the failure point for that narrow market from a business standpoint, no matter how legit the market is, I can't get economies of scale. I can't make the product affordable and easily available. So what do? I change the failure point for multiple audiences. I now make it a convenience product, a home lifestyle product. And then the fail changes. The fix, learn, and act doesn't. So the core thing you do with the slap chop once you get it, or a slanket once you get it, they're the same. So I change my failure point based on my audience, and you can do that with your presentations. Let's say you're a security researcher, you've got the cool DEF CON presentation this year. Chances are, now you're going to get invited if you've got the cool research. You got the cool bug of the day, it's got a name, a logo, a website, everything. You might get invited to multiple security conferences, multiple open source conferences. You might have to present to the company that you took the task for causing the problem. You know, hackers versus open source versus corporate versus programmer versus DevOps. The audience changes, but the problem doesn't. So if you're going to reuse that presentation over and over again, just change the failure point. Adapt that opening to fit the audience. It turns out that the fix, learn, and act are probably going to stay mostly the same. I mean, your jokes might change from Boston to Belgium, but everything else, the core part remains. The core problem you're trying to solve hasn't changed. So just change the failure point like the infomercials do. All right, so remember, fail, fix, learn, and act. Take the structure, not the exaggerated order now nonsense of the infomercial, and put it to use for your research, your product, your white paper, your research poster, whatever it is that you're doing that communicates to another technical audience to take action and solve their problems. And now it's time for my extremely clear call to action. Like and subscribe. Yeah, that's a call to action. Thank you, YouTube. Take this video, share it with a friend. If it helped you, it might help someone else. And stay tuned to Silicon Chef for more of, whatever this is.